Everyone. Thank you so much for being here for our first official community, I better read the name right or I'll be in big trouble. Community Design Advisory Group meeting for the Earthquake Ready Burnside Bridge project. So I'm really excited to get to work with you all and be your facilitator for this work that we'll be doing together, all the learning that'll be happening. So I think it'll be a really good conversations. I will be reaching out to you between meetings, as I've already done, so that we can ask questions or follow up as needed. I think we will just, in just a second here, Multnomah County Chair Vega Peterson will just be able to welcome you all to the meeting. So I'll hand it off to her.
I'm just looking around to see who's here. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It is really incredible to be here. I feel like this is a big milestone for the Earthquake Ready Burnside Bridge project, and it means a lot because I have been working on this since I became a commissioner in January of 2017. So to have gone through so much of the initial stages of this, to have gone through all of the parts of dreaming of this project, engaging with community on this project, working with more of the technical teams on this project, to be here where we have actually gotten to a point where we are talking about a final design is really incredible. So I want to thank all of you for being a part of this process. I think that there is so much public interest in this bridge. The bridge is almost 100 years old, and you can tell. And more importantly, though, this project is an opportunity for us to really build a connection for our city that is as solid and strong as we want our city to be. And it is about something that will last throughout an earthquake. The Cascadia event that will be built strong enough to withstand that. But it's also about a landmark bridge that connects our city from east to west, divides north and south, and it has a lot of meaning. It's really at the heart of our city and our region. So so this is a really important project for many, many reasons, but this is really a once-in-a-lifetime chance to design something that has such a huge part of our city and is going to be such a huge statement. So we know that there's still a lot of work ahead, and I think that the work that you're going to be doing as part of this committee is really important because people want to have a bridge that's going to represent, to be as meaningful, right, as it is for our city, and what this looks like, how it's going to serve people, how it's going to serve us in the event of a Cascade event, how people are going to be able to get help, how first responders are going to be able to access it, how we're going to get the machinery right across the river to really save lives and to rebuild our city. All of those are critically important, but just as important is how day-to-day Portland community is going to be using this bridge, how they're going to use it to pick their kids up from school, to come home from work, how they're going to bike across it, ride across it, roll across it, walk across it, right? All of these different things are possibilities with this bridge, and we want something that our community will be proud of in terms of design, in terms of how it looks and feels. So those are all incredibly important things. I think the other piece that really gets me excited about these kinds of projects is that it really creates some lifeblood for our community in terms of the number of jobs that it creates for our community, the opportunities for a long-term project like this, for someone to come in, to be learning a trade, to become an apprentice, to really find that career in living wage jobs that are really going to help the economy of our community in both the short term and the long term. And so all of these things are pieces of this project that you're helping us build. There will be And this design phase is really the step where all of the visions and dreams really come into the reality of what this could be, what this could look like, what this is going to mean for our community. So I'm really, again, really appreciative of your time. There will be a lot of work that's happening in other tables as we're pushing forward with partners, as we're looking at funding for this. That's part of my job, is like, how are we going to pay for this thing? But I'm working on this. We have Commissioner Jayapal on the board, who is also my co-lead in some of this work. And so that is something that we're committed to. I don't know if you've known this, but we did get a really strong signal of support at the state level this last legislative session with a $2 million investment from the state legislature. That's on top of an earlier $5 million grant that we received from the federal government. So we're really excited about our possibilities of having more partners in funding, as the county and the state at the local level have already been investing in some of this as we're building this project to fruition. So I appreciate your work in this, and I'm glad to be here at the kickoff of this event. I know you have a lot of work ahead of you, but I'm really grateful for all of you being here, and I'm really excited for this chance for us to build this bridge. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Vega Peterson. All right. Well, so we have just some quick housekeeping that we want to go through, and I just want to review our agenda. You do have a packet in front of you that has the agenda plus the PowerPoint, some additional slides that are blown up for you to look at, as well as our charter agreement, and then the bios that I collected from almost all of you. So what we're going to do, just reminder, we are recording this and live streaming, taking photos. Your microphones are picking things up, so please no side conversations. But we will go through where this project has been, where we're headed with all of you, and then we'll look at our work plan. So what are we asking you to do through this process before reviewing our charter and getting agreement from you all about how we'll work together. We have time for public comments, but I don't think anyone signed up, so that may change, but we do offer opportunities for public comment at every meeting. And then we will just ask you to try to save your questions after the presenters go through their information, and then we'll have time for questions after that. So a few just other brief housekeeping things. If there's an emergency where we need to evacuate, we'll go out the main door and we'll go out to the corner of 6th and Hawthorne. The emergency exits are over here and over here if we need to exit. The restrooms are right through the main doors, and feel free to get up and get coffee or tea or cookies throughout the evening. So I won't be offended if you get up. Then we will go through the charter about how we work together. But the high level is we want to treat each other with respect. We want to listen to each other and be curious. So please keep those things in mind. If you do have a question throughout the night, just you can turn your table tent up on its like short end, or you can just raise your hand and I'll take a note to make sure that we get to you. So just try to connect eyes with me, and then I'll know and I'll try to keep track. And as I mentioned, we might hear some rustling with the microphones, so just keep that in mind. I think the last thing is, I don't think I introduced myself, so I apologize. I think I spoke to you, most of you individually, but I'm Brandy Steffen. I'm going to be facilitating, so I'll help keep us on track, get you out of here on time, because we know you're volunteering and we want to respect you and the time that you're donating and giving up for this really interesting project, and all the information you're going to learn and share and give back to the technical team. So I would love for you to help hold me accountable to the charter and the agreements we make, and just to help me be a better facilitator. So let me know if there's some way that I can improve to help this conversation go well. and I would love for us to get to know each other. So I would like, we don't need to go through all the meeting protocols, but you know that's kind of the stuff you learned in kindergarten, how to be nice to each other. So we'll go through it. It's in your charter if you want to look at it. But I would love for you all to just kind of go around, introduce yourselves. This is everybody on the list. Can we go to the next one too, please? So I'd love for you to say your names, your pronouns, your affiliation if you are representing someone, and then just why did you want to be a part of this committee? So some of this is in your bio that's at the end, but just high level, kind of why were you interested? So you can kind of speak towards the microphones. You don't have to really get in there, but maybe Brian, I'll have you go first, and then we'll go around the table this way.
Okay. Hello, my name is Brian Kimura. My pronouns are he, him, and my affiliation is with an organization called JAMO. It's the Japanese American Museum of Oregon, and they're located in Old Town. It was formerly known as the Oregon Nikkei Legacy Center, which was on 2nd and Cooch. But now they rebranded to the Japanese American Museum of Oregon, and there are museums at 4th and Flanders. And we also manage the Japanese American Waterfront Memorial Plaza, which is just north of the Burnside Bridge, and which will most likely be affected during this construction. And I wanted to be involved in this committee. I was originally part of the UDOG committee, which was previous, and I'm an architect by trade, so I just have a general interest in it as well, and want to make sure that the museum isn't adversely affected, or at least understand how the bridge construction will impact a lot of the facilities in Old Town and the plaza. Thank you.
My name's Anthony Jackson. I use he, him pronouns. I'm unaffiliated. I'm an unaffiliated community member at large. And I wanted to be on this committee pretty much because self-interest and self-preservation. I used to work downtown at the Federal Building, and my daughter used to work downtown at the World Trade Center building. And I thought, if the big one hits, I would sure like to know that there is a way to the other side of the river, because we live out in the numbers. And I thought being on this committee would be a great way to sort of see what was going on about it. So purely self-interest.
I'm Sharon Wood-Wortman, and I see some familiar faces. I'm glad to be one of 8 women on this community task force. I think it's probably better than it was back in 1926. Let's see, she, her, okay. My reason to be on the task force is threefold. I may not be around when the earthquake-proof bridge actually gets built or sees the light of completion. I'm veering towards my octogenarian years. Not as old as the bridge, but I'm getting there. Given my long history with the bridges of Portland, starting with my writing an 11-week, 20,000-word series about the bridges for the Oregonian in 1984, and then just one thing led to another till I married a bridge engineer. It's not a bad business to be in. I would feel like a shirker if my input wasn't part of the DNA for this new Burnside's planning. So I'm just really happy to be here. 2, that bridge opened 2 months before my mother was born. So I have a long history in my family. I also grew up in the numbers and have a long history with that bridge, and it's a very important bridge. On the unsentimental side, being identified as a historian for CDOG's purposes. I'm trusting that my participation will ensure that the historic 1926 bridge will be visibly referenced and honored in the 21st century Burnside. Thank you.
I'm Ed Wortman, Sharon's husband, he and him, my pronouns. My affiliation is down as a community member at large, and I like to say that I'm a self-appointed advocate for what I estimate about 800,000 people who live and work west of the Willamette River. That includes all of them, of Washington County. The people that will live and work in Washington County could be stuck out there after bridges fall down over the river and here, as well as it's not just the residents of west side of Portland that could be in a bind. So I'm going to try to look out for that whole group that have anything to do with the possibility of getting trapped. I'm a retired civil engineer. This is my bio, and I admit I worked for Multnomah County for the last phase of my career. I also have a degree in city planning, so that interest, although I didn't practice it too much, I definitely have an interest in the community planning side of the bridge project and what the effects will be on the community. And I've had a lot of experience on building bridges and working for contractors, including what brought me to Portland was, as I said in my bio, was working on the Fremont Bridge when it was built, and worked for contractors for years after that. Okay, come down to my reasons for wanting to be in this group. I also have three. One is to try to do what I can to support the county in its efforts to get a resilient bridge that we can rely on, that is going to be there when the big earthquake comes, and do all we can to try to help the lives of all the people that have to be stuck on the west side of the river, as well as the impacts it'll have on the whole metropolitan area. Second, get into the more of the design itself and the aesthetic side. I would do whatever I can to encourage the design of a bridge that will be not only aesthetically pleasing, but also will fit in with the character of the neighborhoods at both ends of the bridge. We'll probably talk a lot about that as time goes on. And in the previous community task force, that was a topic that came up from time to time, is how different the character of the neighborhoods on the east and the west side of the river. Now, the way that that the inner east side has grown up, especially at the bridgehead, and the historic aspects and different cultural aspects of the west side, and how the feeling was that the character of the new bridge needs to be consistent with the characters of the surroundings. So that's kind of all in the design aspect. And then for the short term, coming back to a point that Brian made, is I have concerns about what the impact of the construction of this new bridge is going to have on the community in a lot of different ways, all the way from traffic patterns to just normal back and forth for the period of the duration of the project, how people get back and forth, but then also the amount of land that will be taken up. This is going to be a really big bridge, and it's quite unusual to build a bridge of this size in an urban area. So right in the heart of the urban area where land is hard to come by, and anything that's done is going to impact the neighborhoods and the traffic and so forth. So that's a big concern of mine, and I really Want to encourage the design team to be as upfront as they can with us here in this group and with the community at large about what to expect during that period. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Valerie Schiller. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm here to represent the Multnomah County Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. So as the name suggests, I'm holding a bicycle and pedestrian interests and needs at the center of my priorities here, and I hope this committee will do the same. I'm a teacher over at Reynolds High School, very east Multnomah County, as well as a speech and debate coach there. Keep myself pretty busy, but I found it extremely important to make time for this committee because so many of the conversations about traffic infrastructure in Multnomah County end up being centered around vehicles, and I want to make sure that our most vulnerable populations, bicyclists and pedestrians, have safety and equity remembered.
I'm Chris Herring. I am the co-founder and creative director of the Portland Winter Light Festival.
Microphone, please.
I'm the co-founder and creative director of the Portland Winter Light Festival. I am part of this because I want to push for creative lighting on the bridge. For a city of bridges, we don't really have bridges that are seen at night. Everything kind of fades away. I feel like you can create a lighting scheme that's like emergency lighting and creative lighting and artistic that can change throughout the year. So that's a big part of what I want to do. I've also been in Portland for my whole life, and I've walked that bridge many a time, and I feel like it's a beautiful bridge. It has like the ability to create, we have the ability to create something that people can see and walk on and enjoy and hang out on. I feel like our bridges aren't being used right underneath them and on top, so I'm just here to push for art and the artists in this city.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris.
Evening, everybody. I'm Fred Cooper. Like Ed, I'm a retired civil engineer, and my passion is big bridges. You know, my legacy project is a very high cable stay bridge over the St. Lawrence Seaway and St. Lawrence River. It's fascinating. I was the quality assurance manager on that project. I was also the same position on Tillicum Crossing, and I've worked on many, many ODOT bridges and other bridges in North America. I'm a resident of Laurelhurst, and so I represent the 1,800 homes right smack on the Burnside corridor. It's just a short distance from the East Bridgehead. People who commute to downtown Portland, concerned about detours and traffic flow, aesthetics of the bridge. I also represent, being an enrolled tribal member and elder, Native Americans in the Portland area, NAYA, affiliated tribes of North America, the Northwest Indian Chamber, Intertribal Fish Commission. I would be a contact to be watching over the concerns that Native American people have, and that's access to the river, and particularly water quality and in-stream construction impacts, those on migratory fish and the Pacific lamprey, endangered species in the Willamette River Basin. So those are my concerns. There's a lot of others, but I'm really excited to carry over from the first committee and be on this. I do want to say that there's a number of carryover people, Jackie, Ed, and Susan, Neil, and myself, and we're question askers, and yes, so get to the nitty gritty, and I hope all of you do the same, not just sit and go raise your card that you're voting on something, but participate and ask questions, and we're going to get a great project.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Neil Jensen. I represent the Gresham Chamber of Commerce and truly most of East County. I was born in Portland. I live in Portland. I like Portland. If that bridge goes down, all the bridges go down, and after the big one, if there's not an east-west corridor, it's going to be really difficult to not just clean up, which there'll be a lot of that. The reconstruction, you need that because of just think of where the supplies are going to land and where they have to be. So for that reason, I'm thinking it's necessary, and if I can bring anything at all to the table, that's why I'm here. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. So I will be one of the guys at the table, or one of the people, sorry ladies, one of the people at the table to ask those questions that the architects and engineers already know the answers to.
My name is Carol Gossett, and I work at OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. And I became very interested in this bridge about 10 years ago. I chaired the noise review board for the city of Portland. And it was at that time that the engineers brought this bridge.
Sorry, can you put the microphone down?
Sure. And it was at that time that an engineering group came in and presented this bridge and brought drawings of this bridge. And I was hooked from that time forward. So I'm really happy to be working with this group, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for using the microphones. I know it's a little bit strange.
Yeah, hello, my name's Todd Deneff, he, him. I represent the Central East Side Industrial Council, which is the main property business advocacy group for the Central East Side, which is a 700-acre area, basically from Powell to I-84, from the river to the 12th. There's over 1,500 businesses and 18,000 employees in this district. And there's been $1.2 billion of investment in this district in the last decade. There's $500 million working its way through design, permitting, and investment in this district over the next 5 to 7 years. So obviously this portal, which we have 4 bridges coming into our district, is crucial for freight, for employees, for residents, for many things. So it's a lifeblood to an area which is really an economic driver for the central core of the city, which is the Central East Side. And I just want something that's going to make this place be preserved and function under some very dire circumstances that we all hope never comes.
I'll try not to make too many sound effects there. Hello, everybody. My name is Susan Lindsay, and I represent Buckman, the neighborhood that you're sitting in right now. I'm the co-chair of the Buckman Community Association, which is a neighborhood bounded by the Willamette River on the west, 28th Avenue on the east, Hawthorne Boulevard south, and Burnside Street on the north. So this is the neighborhood which has the Central East Side as kind of an overlay that will be one of the neighborhoods most affected by the construction of the bridge itself, as well as the aesthetics of the bridge, because this neighborhood will be living with this. I work at Portland State University, so I work downtown, and I go over the Burnside Bridge constantly, and will be affected by the construction phase also. I'm not an architect, and yet many people tell me I have a good eye for something that looks good. So I think in some ways it's very useful to have on this committee people who aren't necessarily artists and architects who can be able to say, well, that's all very interesting, but it doesn't look very good. So I might be that voice sometimes. Anyway, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Sullivan. I'm an architect. I live here in Portland. I was born in Boston, but raised in Hillsborough, and raising my family now just on the other side of 205. As an architect, one of my key focus areas is resiliency, and that was one of the big things that drew me to this project. This is, as was alluded to, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a lasting impression on the city. And I thought with my design skills, with my resiliency background, and with my passion for the city, that I could do some good, make sure that this is something that the whole city can be proud of when we're all done with it.
Hey there, I'm Ian Siren, he, him, community member at large, bartender by trade. I started following this whole process on the news, et cetera, and I love the city. I'm all enthusiasm, no qualifications. I've never done any kind of formal creche like this before, so that's going to be really interesting for me. I'm an artist by training and temperament. I'm not an architect, but I love architecture as a layperson. And perhaps the main reason that I was interested in this process is that I love this city, and I want to help make sure that this is the most beautiful bridge that we can get for the money that we have. So that's my focus.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Welton. Is he, him pronouns. I am an architect, and I am an associate professor in the School of Architecture at Portland State University. And I think my reasons for wanting to be on here are twofold. Professionally, teaching students on a near daily basis how to work through a design process and get the best product that they can, and to make sure that their designs reflect the best possibility for the future of the city. I think, I work with them in that design process and in that capacity, and I'm interested in seeing what that'll mean in this situation. And I think also personally, I am a bicycle commuter. I go from the east side over to PSU on the, I almost said Burnside, the Hawthorne and the Tillicum bridges every day, and so I'm interested to see how this project can help serve those users as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Halstead, he, him pronouns. In terms of affiliations, I'm kind of a Venn diagram of a whole bunch of things, but you could put entrepreneurs and Portland business owners, fifth generation Oregonian, member of the LGBTQ plus community, a lot of different things, but I don't necessarily claim to represent all of those groups. So I hope to just bring a diversity of knowledge to it. I am a design professional, and have worked kind of across tons of different disciplines and applications, materials, and processes. So hopefully that flexibility also can add a little bit to the mix. In terms of why I want to be on this committee, I have a keen interest in a lot of different things: travel, art, architecture, placemaking, urban planning, a lot of different things, and am a devout generalist. And so I think there's kind of an obvious connection to all the pieces that this bridge project represents. The idea of being able to have even a small part in the fingerprint of something that's going to be this important in our infrastructure and the skyline of Portland is, it's just like candy to me. I mean, the idea of being involved with something like that. And then you add onto it on top of that, the whole aspect of resiliency and sustainability, and it's kind of magical as far as I'm concerned, and once in a lifetime.
I'm Sarah Lazaro. I am also a community member at large. She, her are my pronouns. I work in branding and marketing, so I have a strong interest in design and things that look nice. I really joined this, though, because I have been a little disheartened by a lot of the talk about Portland, and just I feel like there's a lot of people that are pretty down on our city the last couple years, and wanted to be part of something that could be something everyone's proud of. So excited to be part of that and bring something really pretty to the city.
Gabriel Ray, I'm here representing Burnside Skate Park and the interests under the east side of the bridge. But beyond that, I've been in the community task forces for quite a while now, and it's just a fascinating process, and to kind of develop what's going on and have input on it is just greatly rewarding. So I kept coming back.
My name is Jackie Tate. I use she, her pronouns. I am also a community member at large, and I was on the previous community task force. I work for Multnomah County in Aging Services, and I used to walk across the bridge to work downtown several times a week. And I was interested in this because I think oftentimes when we do this kind of community work, there's not a lot of Black or brown people or women even at the table. And so I wanted to make sure that we're looking at all the different kinds of people in our city and how these things are impacted, how these projects impact people, how construction impacts people, who are we building the bridge for, what are the purpose for, and make sure we're not forgetting folks who aren't at the table. So that's really important to me. And also that I was also freaked out. I think someone was talking about getting around back across the bridge. And I remember, since I work for the county, one of our emergency management people coming and talking about, the possibility of us being closed off, the east side and the west side being closed off. And people were saying, well, I could just swim across. And they were like, no, you can't swim across. There's going to be a lot of debris in the river, and there's going to be all these things. And just people sort of panicking and thinking, like, what do you do in that situation? So I think that hopefully we get this done before we have to think about what happens in that kind of situation. But I'm really excited to do something for my community, and that hopefully will last another 100 years. So.
My name is Guinevere Milius. I also go by Gwen. I feel like I have to disclose that I'm not an architect, too, but I'm soaking in them. I come from a background of an interest in urban design and transportation issues that grew into a job that then became volunteer gigs at the Pearl District Neighborhood Association. I sat on the Portland Design Commission and was chair for a while, and in that auspice, I was on the Willamette River Bridge Advisory Committee that became the Tillicum Crossing, so the design of that bridge, and that made me into a bridge nerd. And I got very interested in bridge design, bridge safety. I was particularly keen on the issues of pedestrian and bicycle connections with that bridge, and was a passionate advocate for more room for both of those things on that bridge. I've since started a business. I do strategic planning and communications design work, and that so I continue to serve the architecture community through that auspices, and also the public sector, including the county and Portland Bureau of Transportation. So I have deep interests in the transportation elements here, the urban design elements, and also the aesthetics. I would really like to see a well-lit bridge and a bridge that's very beautiful and is a credit to its city. So.
Okay, well, you guys are all awesome, so I'm so excited to be spending time with you over the next year or so. So thank you so much for being here. I love how we all look at things really differently, and I think that's going to be really exciting to our conversations. So thank you for being here again. I'm going to call up Megan to kind of go over the overview and kind of get into the background of things. And so please save your questions to the end. We'll have some time to do that. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Neal. I'm an engineering services manager with the Transportation Division here at the county. I've been working on this project since the beginning in 2016. It's so great to see so many familiar faces who are been with us through this journey. It's like a glutton for punishment. You're coming back for more. So appreciate you participating. But also it's so good to finally meet all the new faces tonight. I was part of the selection process, but I didn't interview. I didn't participate in the interview, so I feel like I know so much about each and every one of you, and meeting you finally today is like meeting a celebrity, so this is just a really exciting moment for me. I am going to be the design phase project manager for the next for this phase of the project. So for those who haven't been here from the start, I just sort of wanted to provide some context of why the county is making this its top priority transportation project. Over the next 10, 15 years, talk a little bit about where we've been in terms of just coming out of the environmental review phase, talk about our locally preferred alternative, which is the alternative we're going to advance and hone in the design phase, and ultimately come out with something that we want to build. And then also just close with a little bit of where we are with funding this whole project. So next slide, please. So as a bridge owner here at Multnomah County, you know, you often think about the threat of the major Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. You really start feeling responsible for helping our region prepare for the big one. You know, and not a lot of scientists really didn't realize that there was a threat of a major Cascadia subduction zone earthquake until the 90s. And unfortunately, many of our critical infrastructure in this region, such as our bridges, are just really not designed to that standard. So what the science revealed is that there's actually, over the last 10,000 years, been numerous magnitude 8 and 9+ earthquakes in our region. And it's been about 323 years since we've had the last one, and that exceeds 75% of all those intervals that have been documented between major earthquakes. So it's really not if, but when the major earthquake could happen. And the intervals could be as close together as like 23 years, could be as long as 500. So, you know, here at 323, I mean, it could be at any moment. So we really feel it's important to look at our bridges and figure out what we can do to get ready. On the next slide, just kind of want to talk a little bit about our network of bridges in downtown Portland. We have 8 bridges, vehicular bridges in downtown Portland from the Markham to Ross Island. They carry 41 lanes of traffic. I think, Ed, you mentioned 800,000 people are utilizing all of these crossings. The reality is that none of them would be immediately usable after a major earthquake. So this project is really about creating that one bridge that the community can rely on. But why the Burnside Bridge specifically? So on the next slide, Burnside is one of the 3 emergency transportation routes that have been identified regionally. The 2 other routes are the Markham Bridge and the Fremont. Those are owned by ODOT. What's the beauty of Burnside is that it extends 19 miles between Washington County and Gresham. It really knits our community together, east-west. We do need a strong east-west route. I think that really resonated with me today. Unfortunately, you know, there's really not a lot of transportation dollars to go around, so ODOT is not really prioritizing looking at the Markham or Fremont Bridge in terms of size and resiliency. They're really focusing on the Interstate Bridge and the Abernathy Bridge, which are very important. You know, we need that north-south connection to Washington, and we need 205 to be a resilient corridor. That really leaves the county, though, kind of with the responsibility to look at creating an east-west corridor for downtown. So now hopefully you understand a little bit about why the county is doing this project, why we feel like the Burnside Bridge is the right choice in terms of investing our scarce transportation dollars. So we created this project, the Earthquake Ready Burnside Bridge Project, and I think the chair mentioned it today, but we have a lot of goals for this project to bring benefits to the community in addition to being that resilient link. You can see many of them on the screen, but we're looking to have a safe multimodal crossing for our region that will serve our community for the next 100 years. We want to ensure that we maximize the value and benefit to the community within the budget that we do have. I think I also heard that here today. You know, we would love to put everything that everyone wants into this project, but we just can't. So we just want to be mindful when we do make design decisions about balancing our budget with the desires of the community. For our workforce diversity goals, we really want to build up and strengthen our local workforce, especially encourage women and people of color to participate in the trades. It's a great career path. We need this workforce trained to help prepare to build other bridges in the region. There's a lot of bridges needing to be repaired or replaced. As I mentioned, we have the Interstate Bridge Project. Hood River would like to replace their bridge. There's the Boone Bridge down in Wilsonville. So having local workers who know how to build bridges is very important to our transportation system, and we're hoping we can help provide that the pathway to apprenticeships, graduating to journey levels, and then moving on to other projects. We want this project to be equitable. We want to ensure all voices are heard. We want to make sure we bring positive benefits to vulnerable communities and minimize the negative impacts to the ones we will be directly impacting during construction. As many of you know, the west side of the bridge is a social service hub for the community, bringing some services offered by no other organizations in the whole city. So we want to be very mindful of how this project is going to impact their services that are critical to their residents. Next, sustainability. We acknowledge that transportation really can have negative impacts on the environment, both in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and your carbon footprint. So we'll be looking to see what we can do to minimize those impacts. We'll be working on applying a sustainability rating system to the project, Envision, as well as implementing the Clean Air program that both the city and the county jointly agreed to minimize diesel emissions on the project. And again, looking at ways we can minimize impact to the habitat in the water, the lights for migrating birds, to try to make this the most sustainable bridge that our designers can achieve. And finally, economic stimulus. We don't really know where the economy is going, but we do know that these jobs bring in tax revenue for the city and the state. We also know that the dollars going into our local community just help generate wealth here locally, and we're looking to make that impact here with these transportation dollars. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I've been working on this project since 2016. We did a 2-year feasibility study whereby we established the purpose and need for the project. We started to develop those important relationships with agency partners to gain support for this project. We also identified, I think it was maybe over 100 alternatives that met that purpose and need that we established. We took those alternatives through a rigorous screening process to narrow them down to a short list of alternatives that we then advanced into the environmental review phase. So we're just about done with the environmental review phase. I'll talk a little bit later what we did in that phase and the outcomes. But we are excited to wrap it up this year and start this next phase, the design phase. This phase should last about 2 to 3 years, and should we find funds to fully fund the construction phase, we could start as early as 2025 and have the bridge open to the public in 2031. So the environmental review phase, which we're just wrapping up right now, it's a federally mandated process stemming from the National Environmental Policy Act passed in 1970. And it really requires any project with federal funding to really look at the environmental impacts of a decision that the federal government is going to make. And those environmental impacts also include social and economic impacts. So from that process, you are required to have a robust public engagement process so that you can get the best outcome for the community before you go build a big transportation project. I'll talk a little bit about the preferred alternative that came out of that process. But before I do that, on the next slide, I just kind of want to underscore that we have had a robust public engagement process. We've been very excited to talk to the community about this project. Over the last many years, we've used a number of tools in the toolkit in order to engage people. As you can see on the screen, we've got briefings, online open houses, surveys, websites. We had the community task force that some of you represented here today. So we plan to continue to do this rigorous level of outreach as we move into the design phase. So on to the preferred alternative. There are 3 key components to that preferred alternative. The first one is the alignment and structure type. And just to note, these are just conceptual renderings. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of finalizing the look and feel of the bridge. Essentially, it replaces the existing bridge with a new movable bridge in pretty much the same alignment that's out there today. The structure type really mirrors what's also out there today, specifically on the west approach. We have a low profile structure, so no structure above the deck. Over the center of the navigation channel, we have a bascule style bridge, also similar to what's out there today. However, on the east approach, that's where this alternative is very different than what's out there today. So with the east approach, we really strove to minimize the number of bridge foundations in the highly liquefiable soils that exist on the east approach. This resulted in a very long span touching down almost to the Burnside skate park. In order to support that long span, we needed a large structure above the deck. We are looking at 2 structure types. As we start the design phase, we have a tight arch that's on the left and a cable stay structure that's on the right. We didn't really feel confident enough to make this decision during the environmental review phase because we really wanted to wait for the contractor to join our team in order to really understand the differences between these 2 types when it comes to cost and constructability. So we should have a contractor on the team by the end of the year. You guys will meet them soon. But that's why we have multiple structure types moving into the design phase. A second key component of the preferred alternative is the cross-section. So this is the cross-section that's currently undergoing refinement right now. We have a 14 to 17 foot wide bike ped path on either side, protected by a physical barrier between the bike ped users and vehicle traffic. That's really to improve a sense of comfort and safety for bike ped users as they use the bridge. A lot of people feel like this bridge is very wide. People are going very fast. They don't really feel safe necessarily on the bridge, and we have had some major injuries and a couple of fatalities over the past 5 to 10 years. So, it's an added safety feature we really want to spend money on. And then in the roadway, we have what we call a balanced cross-section with 2 lanes going in each direction. And this alternative preserves the bus-only lane that's out there today, and also will be designed to support future streetcar if that's something the City of Portland would like to move forward with. The reason, one key distinction of this typical cross-section relative to the existing bridge, you might notice it. It's we are going to be constructing a 4-lane bridge, while the current bridge has 5 lanes. As we were working through the environmental review phase, we were really noticing that the cost of our project was getting greater than $1 billion. During the pandemic, there's a lot of uncertainty around inflation, a lot of material price spikes, a lot of increase in cost due to labor shortages. So understanding that there's also strong competition for transportation dollars in this region, We worked with the board to identify cost-saving measures to the project to bring the cost down under $1 billion. And ultimately, the best way to reduce costs on a project was to remove a vehicular lane. I think that saved us about $150 million. We did work with the city of Portland to select a lane allocation of those 4 lanes. However, we're really, at the end of the day, we all want to get this project funded and built, and we're very, we're very excited that this alternative can still support all of our multimodal needs for the next 100 years. The last piece of the preferred alternative is that we are deciding to close the bridge to traffic during construction. That could be 4 to 5 years. So we did look at a temporary 2-lane movable bridge, kind of like an erector set style bridge, to keep at least some traffic moving during construction. But when we really got into the details, it was very expensive, had a lot of environmental and schedule impacts, and ultimately was not providing the traffic flow that the existing bridge provided, so there'd still be congestion. So in the end, we opted to save the money and the time and the impacts to the environment and just close the bridge to traffic. I'll close with just a brief update of where we are with our funding strategy. We have a target budget of $895 million, and right now we have raised about a third of that. That's through our vehicle registration fee, coupled with about $27 million that we've been awarded recently from the state and the feds. I think Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson mentioned that. We are pursuing grants that could fully fund the project this year through the Biden infrastructure package, so we should have word on those by the end of this year or spring of next year. So, of course, if we get any exciting news, we would share with this group. So that's it for an overview of the project. I appreciate your attention, and I think I'll hand it back to Brandy for questions.
So just want to ask if there are any questions from the group. I know this is a lot of information. So I see Carol has a question. Yeah, and then Valerie.
Yeah, I was wondering, could you just briefly describe the soil conditions, and did you find contaminants in that area?
On the east approach in the liquefiable soils, contamination?
I'll take it.
All right. And Steve, can you introduce yourself too?
Yes. All right, so I'm Steve Drahoda. I am the design team's project manager. Welcome back for half of you, and welcome to the group for the other half of you. What you'll find is I will tell the truth. And sometimes that truth is a little bit scary, and this is one of those conditions. So, you know how often you go to the beach and you walk up to the shore and you put your foot in the sand and you just kind of shake it around and it settles and it sort of moves? Well, that's the condition of the soil on the east side of the river. A little bit on the west side too, but really on the east side for a few hundred feet. And it's really deep. It's about 120 feet deep, and somewhere just before you get to the Burnside Skate Park, this really good soil starts to show up again. And what happened is, because of where the river's located, it's on a curve, all this really soft material got pushed to the outside of the curve. So unfortunately, I-5 is sitting on it, the existing Burnside Bridge is sitting on it, there's lots of buildings sitting on it. What we expect in an earthquake, and especially the Cascadia, this large magnitude 8 earthquake, is that it's gonna shake and settle, just like when you go to the beach. And so what that means is a movement down, settlement down, and a slide towards the river because it's on a slope. And so as this soft material, which turns into almost a fluid, occurs because of the shaking, the whole mass shifts towards the river. We're expecting, when you get closer to the river, on the order of 10 to 20 feet. When you think about where we're putting our supports, it's going to be, up to maybe a foot, depending on how you work with this. So that's why it was so important to have this long span bridge. Pull as much of the support out of that goo for when the, very technical term, the goo, for when the bridge is designed and the earthquake happens. and have this longer span so that it's more stable at the end of the soil. So unfortunately, it's a pretty tough condition. It's not like that universally up and down the river on the east side, but it happens to be at that particular spot. The good news on the west side is only a little bit of it, and we're spanning over it altogether. So we'll talk some about this as we have subsequent meetings, and as I'm looking forward to, I guess, my portion coming up pretty soon. We'll talk about Engineering 101 as part of our couple meetings to get into some of this detail. But this context is really important as we're talking about how does aesthetics match with the functionality of a post-seismic event and an earthquake. A lot like Ed was saying.
Yeah. So I saw Valerie and then Todd.
Yeah, it was unclear from this graphic, how long has it taken to raise the $327 million, and how long do you expect it will take to raise the additional $600 million, or when will that have to be raised by?
We've been talking about this internally, and once there's some key go, no-go decision points in a project like this, for example, tearing down a building to take right-of-way, demolishing the whole bridge. So, making those decisions is really tricky if you don't have all the funds in place. So looking at our schedule, understanding when those very impactful actions are going to be, we feel like we need to have all the funding identified for this project by the end of 2025. And how we get there, well, we have plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan Z. So we're turning over every stone, we're looking into every rock. We're very excited about this opportunity that the Biden infrastructure package happened to be announced as we're doing this project. So our focus right now is those federal grants for this year.
Great. Todd? And Patrick.
Just want a little bit of illumination on the how you allocated the traffic lanes. I saw going on the east side, bus-only lane, and then just one travel lane. And then coming from the west side, you have a trolley lane potentially and a travel lane. And usually with trolley, cars can also inhabit that space too, where a bus only they can't. So basically you have one travel lane going east for vehicles right now. Is that correct? That sounds very skinny, especially when you have 3 lanes basically now. And at certain times, we have obviously a light right there at Grand Avenue, and it backs up with 3 lanes all the way over to the west side, not always, but then now you have one travel lane. So I'm just wondering, you have a finite amount of space you have to allocate. So drill down on that reasoning for me.
Yeah, this is, the county is really primarily responsible for the bridge. The city is primarily responsible for the lane allocation and roadway traffic. So we're happy to connect you with the city of Portland to answer those questions. But I will say this, the beauty of having this open deck is that should the congestion be so bad that that decision needs to be revisited, the lanes can be changed in the future. I think this bridge originally had streetcar on it. It originally had 6 vehicle lanes. Then there were bike lanes installed. So bridges in general change over time. And we did look at a reversible lane as well. It would be the first one in Oregon. We weren't all on board with being the first of one of those. However, it is something we looked at, and in the future, the traffic engineers can take another look and make another decision at that time.
So did the city basically give you that allocation as a starting point for what they want to see?
Yes, it's what the bridge will look like on opening day, but after that, anything can change.
All right, so Patrick, and then just one more question if there's maybe one more.
Thank you. I actually wanted to return to Carol's question earlier. You gave us a great rundown on the mechanics of liquefaction, but the question I think was more about what we found in the soil, if there was anything that was a a toxic or hazardous element within that. I think I'd love to hear that.
Okay,
answer.
so more about the results of the soil contamination.
Correct.
Okay.
I answered the wrong question. So we have done some preliminary work from a hazardous material standpoint. We did find some hazardous materials at some places throughout the soil. And so as we're looking at excavating out to put new foundations in or to remove existing foundations, we have to be pretty careful about what we find, haul it, and frankly, take care of it in a special way and then haul it to a special disposal site. So we're trying to be, kind of use a scalpel approach to the excavation work, not just kind of glory hole everything, but really be conscious of how much we're taking out, because we know that there are some areas where there are going to be soils that we don't want to scatter. We want to be particularly careful with it. It's also kind of true in the river too. So as we start looking at the different construction methods, it's one of the things that Megan mentioned earlier about getting the contractor on board. How they do their work is really going to be important in how we design the bridge. So that's the benefit of this process, where both the designer and the contractor are put together thinking of how best to solve the problems. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into this.
Answer your question? Okay. All right, Susan, you just snuck in under the wire. Okay. And then we'll hear from Steve, and we'll hear from Carol Gossett as well. Wrong Carol. Carol Mayer Reed. Sorry.
Okay, I snuck in. So I'm looking at the funding gap, all right, and it seems that there's an enormous dependency on funding this necessary bridge on vehicle registration fees. However, on my daily walks every day, probably 1 in every 3 vehicles in the city of Portland has an expired registration. There's no penalty right now for not having a current registration, nor even having a license plate. So I'm curious about the dependency on funding a bridge on something that people are able to avoid. And I'm wondering if there's been some thought around that, either figuring out a way to get people to register their cars or moving towards some kind of other mechanism to fund the bridge.
Well, enforcement is not, our county's jurisdiction, but it's definitely something that we are concerned about. One of the games I play when I'm stuck in traffic is looking at vehicle registration fees too, like looking at the stickers. But I think you're just identifying some of the challenges we have in funding transportation. The county has very limited levers to pull to fund big projects like these. We're not ODOT with more resources, a state DOT or any state DOT. So we're just doing what we can to try to fund this bridge. But so then the vehicle registration is kind of our main resource. Also, unfortunately, it was a surprise to us, but there's been a drop in vehicles registered over the last few years. People have just moved out of the county. So we're just doing the best with what we have.
All right, thank you, Megan. Okay, so we'll have Carol Mayer Reed come up, who is our urban design community advisor, and Steve, just to talk about the current design phase. And I think maybe the first slide is you, still Megan.
It's an encore.
Yeah. Last one. So on big projects like these, a lot of people wonder how are decisions made. So I just sort of wanted to try to explain this in a simple way with this graphic here. Projects like these really require a lot of input from a wide variety of groups. At the bottom here are representations of those groups, such as our agency partners, their wants and needs and expectations, regulatory agencies like DEQ, Army Corps of Engineers, who really, and also the city land use process, who really permit your projects. So what they will approve is very important. We have impacted stakeholders, the businesses, the neighbors, the social service providers who are going to be affected by the construction. Then our technical working group, I'd say an army of consultants who are very knowledgeable on a number of topics. And then this group, the Community Design Advisory Group, who will provide input along the way. All this information gets synthesized and fed up to our project management team, which I'm part of, and there's several members in the group here that are part of that group. We will distill the important information to an executive management team, which is our commissioner staff, our department directors, division directors, and they'll make key decisions on the project. But however, ultimately the Board of County Commissioners has final approval over all major decisions. And throughout all of the process, the general public has an opportunity to weigh in, provide input, and they are, they're listened to at various levels in this decision-making framework. So now I think I will pass it to Steve.
Yeah. So what's key to this group is, again, the bottom right corner in yellow, Community Design Advisory Group, as a principal mechanism to make recommendations in that legend that get brought forward through the project. So the role of this group in making the recommendations is important. And frankly, we're going to put you guys in a little bit of a tough spot as we move towards recommendations, because we're going to ask you, you're going to have trade-offs. You have this choice or this choice. And it's going to be up to you to help the project decide between alternatives and trade-offs that aren't going to be easy. And that's one of the reasons why this group is so diverse in its perspectives, in its backgrounds, in its locations, in its geographies, and its opinions, is because we want to get a wholesale, broad-based and diverse set of opinions that leads to a recommendation that can stand up. And ultimately, the board is going to have to make the call, the decision itself. So thank you in advance as we are on our journey. And with that, why don't we take the next slide? So it's funny, when I first saw this, yes, it's key elements and considerations, or we call this the what Ed Wortman said earlier slide. As he talked about all these different things that we consider as a bridge engineer. So I didn't say this, I'm a bridge engineer. I've been designing bridges for 30 years. Originally in San Diego, doing lots of seismic bridge designs, big and small. Moved up here about a little less than 20 years ago, and been working on the Burnside Bridge since 2014, so for a long, long time. And we're really excited to get to this place. In green are a lot of things that bridge engineers and the design team, this army of experts, have to consider. Whether it's the effects on traffic and mobility. You're going to hear a lot of the same things you guys said as you were talking about interests during the earlier part. Construction impacts, especially to businesses or a skate park or the Japanese American Historical Plaza or Waterfront Park or whatever it is. Permitting. The city is set up to protect the resources that the different infrastructure elements are in. So the permitting process isn't just what does it mean to protect that, but what is the vision? How does it work with the current context and land uses and historic nature of the downtown core? The ease of maintenance. This is going to be a bridge that's designed for 100 years. And so when you think about 75 years from now, what are we going to have to do to make, frankly, their lives easier as they're maintaining the bridge, like we have to think about the existing bridge today? Schedule and cost, well, we need to make this happen fast because like we talked about, the earthquake, frankly, could happen at any time. We cross our fingers that it won't, but we don't know. So schedule's pretty important, not just because it's a project, but because we're doing something that creates a difference and protects the livelihood for when this event occurs. Cost, there's a reality to how much money the county has. You just saw the budget shortfall. And so we're working really hard to come up with the funds to build this bridge, and every dollar it costs more is that much more we have to find to fill that gap. So cost is going to be a constant trade-off as we're looking at other things like, as shown in the bottom right, which is yellow, bridge form, the architectural, the urban design, the aesthetic features. So that is going to be the focus of your guys' efforts. Good news is you don't have to worry about as much everything in green, even though I talked about it. Our need for this group is to focus on what's in yellow, with the context and understanding that these other things in green are going to be really important. And as the ultimate decision is made on bridge type and all of the aesthetic forms and the aesthetic features. All of this is going to be balanced together. So it's going to be, frankly, fascinating as we get through this. The good news is we're not starting at square one. And Carol, who's going to be super awesome for you guys to talk to on this journey, is going to give a lot of the briefings. What have we done so far, and where are we going to go from here?
Thank you. Welcome, Patty Tillett. You know, what's interesting is I wrote out my remarks in advance, and just about everybody between you and him and Megan have said so many of the things that I had written down, so I'm going to start winging it at this point. I'm a landscape architect and have worked with Mayor Reed in downtown Portland for the last 40-plus years. And in the audience is Jeremy Shane, who is my business partner, and he's also the principal in charge of the work that our firm is doing. It's really interesting when I tell my neighbors that I'm a landscape architect and I'm working on the bridge, they go, "Are you going to have window boxes on the bridge?" I go, "No, there won't be any window boxes." What is a landscape architect doing on this committee, and what is a landscape architect doing having input into this project? And we're really looking at the form and a lot of what was in the 2 yellow boxes along with all of you. And Jeremy's been involved in the visual resources part of the project for the last 4 years, and I was involved with the UDOG committee. You'll hear a lot about UDOG, interesting name. And we work together with those groups to define criteria. And we won't get into that tonight. But I did want to tell you that Jeremy and I have worked on a lot of transportation projects as urban designers and landscape architects for TriMet, for ODOT, for PBOT, and specifically bridges and bridge heads. So we're not only looking at the bridge as the entire structure, but we're looking at how it meets the ground, you know, how people access it, the bike and the ped connectivity. So I just was really happy to hear all those topics addressed when you made your introductions. I might just add, I live on the east side and I've worked on the west side for over 40 years, and I cross that river twice a day, and as many of you, and observe it from our office window for the last 40 years. And I always note what's going on. There used to be more barges. There used to be houses manufactured in the district that's now our south waterfront that were shipped up to Alaska, but they were built here on barges, and we'd watch cities being manufactured and taken up north. This river is phenomenal. It's got a mood. Sometimes it's capricious. Sometimes it looks like it's a mirror that you could almost walk on because the water comes in and out twice a day. So, and I also might add, my first project in Portland was Cathedral Park. And so I got to look at that St. John's Bridge a lot, and I fell in love. So you've been thanked already. I'll thank you again. Excuse me. This is a rare opportunity to become really deeply engaged in this, and we'll all learn a lot from each other. You'll learn from us, and we'll learn from you. And I just heard a lot of shared goals and aspirations, and I thought that was important. I get really emotional as I'm getting older. The tears come more. Anyway, but this, all of you have a unique perspective and a knowledge of the city that I think is just really important, and you expressed your passion. So we also appreciate the past work from the advisory committee, and moving toward this 30% design phase is like schematic design. As architects, we call that schematic design, design development, you know, construction drawings. So 30, 60, 90 are analogous to that. The UDOG was called the Urban Design and Aesthetics Working Group, and that committee met 9 times. All of it was virtual. We could, you know, it was in 2020. We weren't face to face. So some people we've met on virtually, and some people now we get to meet again in person. And then the community task force met 30 times, and sometimes members of the task force joined the UDOG, and so we tried to integrate those 2 committees, and roughly half of all of you served on one committee or the other, but then there's all the new people too. And I really find that amazing because, just based on what you've already said, we think the continuity is important and the cohesion of the group, but the new perspectives from the rest of you coming in always is a benefit. Very, very important to have. So, and Steve stole my line. I said, you read my,
I did.
You did. But we're not Okay. We're not starting from scratch, and we will be reviewing a lot of the criteria in meetings 2 and 3. So if this one isn't meaty enough for you, I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek at what's up ahead. HDR is the company that Steve works for. I don't know if you said that or not. But anyway, they have engineers and bridge architects. We're also bringing on another bridge architect in the month of October to be announced in November. We're going to explore the urban context more and the characteristics of our beautiful river. And I encourage you to enjoy and participate in one of the 2 upcoming tours. One is tomorrow at what time? 1, if you haven't signed up for that. And the other one is next Thursday, which is after
5:30.
5:30, and we may get into some darkness hours there, but we'll be a big group, so we should be fine. And I think seeing it on foot, walking it, getting a feel for it, is an essential part of this experience. We'll also be addressing Waterfront Park, the Japanese American Historical Plaza, the Inner East Side Development, Old Town Chinatown, and we have a nearby snarl of freeways. We can't ignore those, they are there. So it makes for a very interesting context, and consideration of our public open spaces are really key. So we want to work on minimization of impact. We want to express the character and the landmark quality of the bridge. And I say landmark, I don't take that lightly. We're going to put a new thing on our map, the city of Portland. And it's going to be big, and it's going to be important. Everybody's going to see it, and there's multiple points of view. So the way it looks, the way it meets the land, the way it hovers over the river, the way it opens for bridges, I mean, all of that is really, really important. Megan described the bridge as 3 parts, and the girder portion coming right out of the west side is about 800 feet. So 4 blocks, 4 Portland city blocks. The bascule portion is about 400 feet. So if you think of 2 blocks, it's big. And then between 700 and 1,000 feet of the long span portion, depending on whether it's tied arch or cable stayed, the 2 alternatives that you saw tonight are just sketches. They're just concepts. It's not really a baked design. And those were the 2 that were endorsed by the UDOG for the long span, the tied arch and the cable stayed. So we're going to be needing to look at coherence and form. Ed, you'll want to grapple with the same problem of how do you put these 3 structural types together? What do they look like when they join hands across the river? And examining the scale, the proportion, the sense of gateway, whether you're coming east or west or through the river or on I-5 as you drive under it. If you just came in from I-84 or go left, you'll drive under it again. So there's a lot of context to explore there. And the quality of the experience. Can you stand on this and not feel like you're getting run over by a car? Can you linger there and look at the quality of the river? Can you, maybe there's a belvedere, there's something, spaces that aren't in the main thrust of the traffic that's going through there. So those are the things that I think we want to think about. And we'll be looking at use of 3D models. There's so many points of view, whether you're in a tower or you're on the street or you're on the bridge or you're on another bridge looking back at it. I mean, there's just so much to consider. Very sculptural. And then the architectural form and design is something we're going to have very rich discussions about. I have no doubt about that. And everything from the large supports down to the small details. Steve calls it architectural details, big things like what holds the bridge up, so more than a detail to me. But the bridge piers, the operator house for the movable portion of the bridge, the materials, the barriers, the railings, the lighting, the belvederes if we can have them, and more things like that. So again, coherence and continuity and aesthetics and scale and proportion, all those things that we're gonna love to talk about. And then the access of these active modes and how gracefully they go on and off, and what separates pedestrians from bicycles. You know, that's another way to think about all of that. We'll hear a lot about construction impacts. We'll have a million questions, but anyway, those are just sort of the things that were floating around in my mind that I could offer tonight. Just again, to appreciate some of the background, the public design discussions to date, there's been a total of 11 public design discussions. There's been a joint Historic Landmarks and Portland Design Commission design advisory request. That's the two city commissions together. There have been 2 to the Design Commission, and there have been 2 to the Historic Landmarks Commission, and there's been 3 joint. So it's not a new conversation that the members that sit on those commissions, they're going to be familiar with what this project is about. And then the Urban Design Panel of the AIA, APA, and ASLA has had 3 briefings on it, and we expect to continue that. So that in the 350, what was that, briefings and presentations? Yeah. So to various agencies, stakeholders, and community groups. Believe it or not, there's still work left to do, and we're going to be doing it with you. So we're really looking forward to it, and we appreciate your help, your advice, your questioning, your input very much. So thank you again for participating. It's a lot of work.
Great. Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
All right, so Steve, I think you're going to work us through some of the timeline and the plan for the group, and then we'll have some questions before we go ahead.
And I'm going to go quickly through this. So hopefully you guys, I was envisioning the future as Carol was talking. And so what we're going to show here is how are we going to do that?
And you all have this, sorry.
Yes. So there's 2 graphics. The one you basically see in your screen is slightly different on the sheet. This one is easier. I will ask you when we get to this slide, though, to pull out this 11x17. But on this particular slide, there's a flow. As you see the diamonds in this open star to the closed star, next diamond. It's really thinking of this as 2 phases. Phase 1 is our near-term work between now and that magical 30% design. As engineers, we love numbers, and everything's a number. So 30% design represents the concept and the type selection. So what is the bridge form going to be? Tied arch or cable stay? And in particular, what is the kind of aesthetic feature, the form of it? Because there's different ways you can build a cable stay. It can be kind of like it was, a goalpost style. You can do it in other ways. On the tied arch, the one that you saw, well, there's other ways to build that too. So we're going to be exploring some of that information, and at that 30% mark, based on recommendations from this group, and supported by public input. And it's not all just going to be on you guys. We're going to create some public outreach moments, gather input from the public at large, and then give that to you so you can have some data from just the public at large looking at some of these same questions. So that 30% mark, that's when we're going to have the type selections, so the bridge form, the materials, and the basic type of bridge, especially on the east side, resolved. The second part is after that 30% milestone. And that's where we're going to start getting into, well, I guess I call details like large pier shapes as details. But that's where we're going to start getting into these other features and asking, how much with this fixed cost are we going to invest in, for example, bridge lighting, versus the railings, versus the sculpting of the in-water piers, versus the sculpting of, well, whatever the superstructure is. So there's going to be lots of trade-offs, and this cost parameter is going to be informative for how do we want to spend our money, or how do we want to spend the county's money, really? How do we want to spend the county's money to get to a solution that we can all adore at the end and still meet the schedule and cost? And so when we get to the star that says select bridge aesthetic features, around the 60% mark, that's when the majority of the work for this group will be completed. And then you guys get to sit back and watch the details of the design process unfold until we reach, frankly, construction sometime in that 2026 time period. So with that in mind, if we go to the next slide, these key milestones are really just a representation in a different format of what I described. And so because we're light on time, you have it in your handout and we can go forward. But this one is the how. So this is where I do recommend that people pull out this 11x17 because the print is pretty small on the screen. And in fact, this is why I brought up my glasses as well, so I could read the 11x17. So what we have done is said, okay, that first phase, and again, the important part is find where it says 30% design, and there are 7 meetings just like this, where we're going to go through different topics that ultimately lead to, in meeting number 7, a recommendation for the bridge type. It involves what's shown in blue, that public input, and so there's moments where we take the discussions from these groups, ask the public to weigh in. You guys will get that information back before you make a formal recommendation that goes up the line for a decision by others. If you look in those green vertical bars, you'll see a lot of little words. Those words are going to be really important. So today is really a meet and greet describing the project overview, the chartering process, which we'll get to next, and then this work plan. So it's really an orientation today. Meetings 2 and 3, we're going to start getting into some of the details. How do you want to make some criteria that ultimately leads to the recommendation you're going to pick? And so we're going to draw upon, just like Carol said, the UDOG, and see, I love that acronym, but the UDOG's work that created criteria, and say, what do you want to keep of this? What is important? What is relevant for the kind of questions we're asking now? And then, is there anything else we want to use to develop criteria to select? When we come back after the holidays, meetings 4 through 7, that's really where the meat of, okay, let's start diving into the options we have in front of us, ultimately leading to a recommendation. And there's various steps along the way to get to that point. I will say, I hope everyone's around in April, because right now we think we have 2 meetings. We're going to have some pretty heavy lifting at that point, because we're nearing the end to get to a recommendation of what the bridge type is. Once we get past that 30%, then we go from meetings 8 through 12, and this is where we're going to be focusing on all of those other amenities and options and how best to create a unified structure. Yes, it's 3 bridges, but it really needs to be 1 bridge. So how do we make it cohesive depending on the bridge type we have and all the options that we have, and what is the recommendation for investing the money in the different architectural features that we talked about before? So we're going to have lots of graphics that get into this. The bridge architecture team is super, super awesome. And we're going to bring all of this work in and then explore these kind of discussions with you with a twinge of nerdy bridge engineering on the side, because it does influence how we approach some of these options. So that's what we're going to do. I think Carol said it much more eloquently than I did, but I'm an engineer, so I'm going to talk like an engineer. So.
Good job, good job. Okay, so I think we have a little bit of time for questions. So that was a lot of information. You obviously can talk about it. We'll go through this again, and you have all the materials. But I see a couple questions, so maybe like 3 or 4 questions before we get into the rest of the meeting. So I see Fred and then Todd.
Is this going to be hard, Fred?
I had to start this off. We get to this meeting 8, I guess is where it is. We now have input coming back regarding the 2 different bridge types, I presume, at that point. I want to go back to the first round of decision-making with the Citizen Task Force, because there was other input besides our own that came from design review boards, historic preservation organizations, various groups that were pretty influential and expressed preferences for certain architectural detail or approaches to the design selection. And to me, at least I perceive that some of that input went forward and not through our group. And I think that's really important here when we're making the kind of decisions that showed up on the other diagram, okay, that we receive input from the design review board, that comes to us, okay, doesn't circumvent us and go forward, you know, for the design. So I see that as an equally important as well as public input are these special groups that have, you know, major decision-making roles in a project like this. So it's more of a comment rather than a question, but I'm saying, will that type of information come to us? I guess that's what
100%. So in an effort to not clutter this graphic, there are a lot of other inputs that we're going to be seeking. Direct input from property owners and other stakeholders. I think the design commissions, the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Design Commission are very important groups that we actually eventually are going to be part of the permitting process.
If you look at that simplified diagram up there, it doesn't funnel through us. It goes forward.
So that information will be gathered and brought to this group as input points, and that will happen well before we get to a recommendation moment for you guys. So thank you for saying that. Those were omissions on the graphic.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Todd, and then Ed.
Yeah, this may be a little bit out of bounds, but a lot of public projects will have a very small percentage to go towards art or something within a project. Bridges may be not part of that requirement, but I'm just thinking because of art and design, and art could be wayfinding and lighting, it could be historical markers, it could be sculpture, and it could take in a lot of historical and indigenous sorts of things. That's probably not in our purview, but is there any thought about any of that, or could it even be something that we could address?
Yeah, so there is not a formal requirement to have art as a percentage of project costs. A lot of times there are other projects and owners that do exactly that. It doesn't exist for this job per se. But we're looking at the umbrella of bridge aesthetics and these other amenities to capture some of that. And so there's kind of a line on what is art that isn't necessarily covered if we got funding from FHWA, the federal government, versus other things that are, like bridge lighting. So there's sort of a administrative line in the sand of what we can do and not do. But a lot of the things you mentioned fall within the realm of architecture and bridge engineering that would qualify. But art per se, sculptures, for example, that's something that isn't necessarily it unless it comes out of a mitigation process that was discussed as part of the NEPA process. And there is a little bit of that.
Great. Ed?
Okay, kind of a minor point, but there've been a couple of mentions of the contractor being selected and getting involved in the design process. I think it might be worthwhile for the folks here who aren't used to how the contracting business these days and just what the CMGC process is and why it happens that a contractor is going to be involved early on and just how that's going to work and where it stands now. I think there was a mention it'd be a selection, but I'm not sure that was very specific.
Great.
Yeah, so there are some traditional, and this is kind of geeky business side stuff, processes for getting major infrastructure projects done. Oftentimes it's a bunch of engineers like myself will develop designs and get them permitted and do all that. And then there's a line in the sand and the owner then bids it or procures a bidding process for a contractor to give a low price on, and then ultimately they would win and go construct. That's sort of a classical process. That's not what the county is doing. The county is saying, you know what, it's so important to get the contractor involved in the design process that they've hired us as engineers and separately hired a contractor or will be hiring a contractor by the end of the year. And together, we're going to be looking at all of the design issues together. Because in a lot of ways, some of the things, like how you build the bridge affects how we design the bridge. Because you put this piece on, there's this piece on, and it changes the loading conditions. So by having the designer and the contractor at the same time, we can solve a lot of the questions that as engineers we make assumptions on as the contractor is bidding. So the full team with the contractor on board and the benefit of all of the contractors' expertise on how they build the bridge, how they fabricate in the steel shops, how they fit it up, and ultimately how they minimize the impacts, we're all going to have that benefit as we're looking at the way in which we're constructing this. And the added benefit of, if we have a question about pricing, we can tell the contractor, we need you to price this versus this versus this versus this, because if we're looking at trade-offs and selecting pieces to put together into an ultimate solution, we need to know what we can afford. So they're going to be instrumental in that process as well. So frankly, kudos to the county for having the foresight to say you need to bring both entities in to make this job everything it can be. So that's the way that we're going to handle this.
Awesome, thanks. All right, I'll let you get out of here, and then we'll move to the next part where we want to talk about the charter and our group protocols. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so hopefully you all read this, a bit of light reading, bedtime reading. It's very engrossing. So I'm just going to keep it at a high level because this really is our agreement with one another on how we're going to work together, right? So we're setting up these boundaries to have good working relationships. And so I really just want to go over this pretty high level. So preamble, we don't need to talk about that. Purpose of the charter, we are agreeing how to work together. So it includes our decision making, like Fred has been talking about a little bit, how we interact with one another, and it's how I'm going to hold us all accountable. So if you're behaving badly in future meetings, which none of you will, then I can say, hey, hold on, we all agreed to be respectful, and so let's stay that way, right? You'll see the purpose of the CDAG there at the bottom of the first page. Really, you're an advisory body to the county, and so really you're going through all of this work that was just explained in the work plan, really to help the Board of Commissioners make their ultimate decision. And you can kind of see that again, this same graphic that was shown earlier. And kind of as Fred mentioned, there's all these different groups who are going to feed in to help the Board of Commissioners make their final decision. You can see the outcomes of the group is really to make recommendations on the bridge form and the aesthetic details. So all that stuff Carol and Steve were talking about. We expect that we will be working together through early 2025. So hooray for lots more cookies and dinners together. Again, it's membership. We're all here working together. We're not necessarily representing the county's population exactly, but you all have such great input, such great viewpoints. We wanted to bring you together. So the most important thing there is the last paragraph right before it says member participation, and basically that's that we're going to share your email information with you all so that if you want to talk to each other outside of the meeting, you can do that. Please just copy me so that I can just keep a record of it for our notes. So feel free if you're like, hey, I have a question about blah, 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 and you're an expert in that, feel free to do that. Under member participation, please tell me if you can't attend. You can submit comments ahead of time. We'll try to get you the materials a week in advance, and we'll send those electronically. We'll have printouts just like today. So at the meeting, you don't have to worry about printing anything. We are going to move forward even if you're not at the meeting. So please try to be at the meetings. You can have an alternate who's attending and can listen in, but they cannot participate in the discussions. So they're welcome to kind of sit in the back, listen in, help fill you in. Again, we're going to record all these meetings. You can listen in, and we'll give you notes as well. But the alternate wouldn't be able to sit at the table. And you can always submit questions and comments before the meeting.
There's some information in here about COVID, because we know that's part of our lives, unfortunately. So you can look at the county's website. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email's in there. And I can give you my phone number. So like, if you want to, just give me a call or send me an email. Email is probably the best. I respond to it quite often. Evaluation and review. Always feel free to reach out to me, ask questions in between the meetings. I know I was jotting down like, oh, we need a glossary. What's a Belvedere? I don't know. So I was like, okay, we probably need to get that. So if you have questions, I might have questions too, and then I can reach out to the team and hopefully get you some answers. We'll also do a more formal evaluation process just to make sure that like this process is working out for you, right? We want to make sure it's fruitful for everyone. And then we will try to respond in a timely manner. So hopefully 3 business days. So just keep that in your mind as well. And pester me if I don't respond to you, because that there's a problem somehow. Maybe something got lost. We will try to keep meetings weekdays, 5:30 for dinner, 6 o'clock start time. That'll be kind of our standard, really similar to how we've set things up today. So we expect most of our meetings will be in person, fingers crossed, and we will continue to live stream and record, and we anticipate being in this room. So I was just saying, like, I wonder if we could look outside or see something, but we'll probably be in here, so we'll get nice and comfy. Meetings and materials, as I said, we'll email it to you. We might have homework, right? So Steve was mentioning about lots of information coming in. I know there was a request, maybe can we get more information from these other groups and what they're saying? So there may be things that we send to you in between meetings that we want you to look at, so that when we come to the meeting, we can spend more of our time talking and less time of us talking to you. So hopefully that's what we can spend our time. And you already know that we're going to post the recording. We will also have a written summary of the meeting notes. We are going to track your name to your comments, so that if you disagree or anything like that, that's totally fine. And also, in the later part of the charter, we talk about a conflict of interest. And so there will be a training that we will send to you around conflict of interest. And so we want to make sure that if there is a conflict of interest, that that's noted and that your comments are associated in that way. My job as a facilitator is trying to make sure that you all participate. I'm sorry this meeting is so much talking, not so much participating. That's how it goes the first meeting sometimes. I'll try to remain neutral, and again, I'll try to like highlight, what are those terms or things that are maybe engineer or architect speak, so that everybody can be on the same page. And then you officially give me permission to keep the group moving and on track. So that's written in here. So I have that permission. The big thing is the decision making. And we have in here on page, there's no number, but it's working towards consensus. And so what that really means is that we want to hear from you. We don't need unanimity. I can't say this word, which is sad for my profession, but we don't need you all to agree. But what we do want is that most of you are heading in the same direction, right? And so we will be taking periodic temperature checks. A thumbs up means a yes, a thumbs down means a no. And in between means like, I kind of have a disagreement, or maybe I need some questions answered before I can vote yes or no. So we'll be doing that. Basically, 75% of you should agree to move forward with something. And once we agree on that, we also are saying we're not going backwards in time. We're agreeing to move forwards. And as you saw from Steve, this timeline is very quick. And it's very quick for all those reasons that like Megan talked about, for the chance of this earthquake happening, getting funding, all of those other reasons. So hopefully it doesn't feel rushed just for the sake of being rushed, but that we really want to move forward in a thoughtful way, but also be concise. So we're getting close, people. I think the other piece is just that it's okay to have differences of opinions. It's okay to disagree, and we can acknowledge that, document it, share it. That's totally fine, and that's part of the process. So again, we can go through that together. We can be respectful. I know that's not very common all the time nowadays, but we can talk and have conversations around that. If you do get questions from the media, all of those questions should go to Sarah, which is somewhere, I thought, in the back. So Sarah's over there. So any media requests, please send them to Sarah. We ask that you do not speak on behalf of the CDAG group. You can, of course, speak as your own representative. Some of you are representing other organizations. Of course, we are not limiting that in any way, but please don't represent the whole group. That's where Sarah comes in, and she is representing Multnomah County. Again, we're taking pictures. And governance structure, there are no formal delegated powers of authority for this group to make decisions for or represent Multnomah County, or spend money for Multnomah County, but you're an advisory body and to the project and to the county. So still very important, you just can't spend money for the group. So, and then again, we will try to document conflict of interest. Really, there will be a whole training on that, so I don't need to get into it. But we just want to make sure that we're transparent and above board and open with one another and where our interests lay. And there are some examples at the back of your charter about like what's a potential conflict and what is an actual conflict, and how that can happen. So that is something that we'll go through in another training. So we get to try out our first time as a group. Yes, no, right? Yes is yes, I support this recommendation. Thumbs down is do not support this recommendation. Middle, we can either do like, I've got questions, or like, yeah, I can live with it. Like, I'm not thrilled, but yeah, it's okay. So the first thing is we're going a yes, no. Anyone have questions or something that they cannot live with that we need to talk through about the charter? So anything that you're like, I've got a question or I need to talk this through about the charter, thumbs up. If there's nothing that you need to talk through about the charter, thumbs down. Okay. I'm seeing all thumbs down. Hooray. Look at that, unanimous. Good work, everyone. Okay, so then the last question I need to ask you is if you agree to adhere to the rules and as are outlined in the charter. So if you can agree to abide by the charter, then thumbs up. If you're like, no, I don't want to have you move us along, thumbs down. Okay, another unanimous, amazing gold stars all around. Okay, so this is our public comment period, but I don't think we have any public comment, and we're still no public comments online, right? Okay, so that one's done. I think we're down to our next steps. So, as mentioned previously, we're having a bridge tour tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I do have some waivers. If you have not filled out a waiver and you need to, no shame. I'll just pass it down. And I'll just pass it down. You can take one if you need one. And we have some more if you need it. So again, tomorrow, 1 o'clock meeting at the west end of the Burnside Bridge. At the south, I'm like looking around, where's Beth? Right, I keep saying right next to that water treatment building. Is that true? Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad I didn't lie to you. So, yeah.
Is that, you know, where the Portland Saturday Market is?
Yeah.
Slightly south of that. But if you were going to the Portland Saturday Market, right in that pavilion area, there's that covered pavilion area, that's where you'll find it.
Yeah, and it could be raining, so maybe under the pavilion. So that's where we'll be tomorrow at 1, and then again next Thursday at 5:30. We'll be there, same place. So right now we're limiting around to 12 people. We're not at that cap yet, so feel free to just let us know which one you want to attend. And then our next meeting is going to be on Thursday, October 26th in this room at 5:30 for dinner, and then 6 o'clock start time. Any questions, Valerie? I see you.
So for the homework piece, could I request that we receive it 2 weeks in advance rather than 1? So I know that sometimes there's like things that you don't have in time, but if there are things that we know that are available, could those things be sent sooner rather than later?
I definitely hear your request. I don't know if I can guarantee that, but I will definitely take it back to the team to see what we can get to you ahead of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Neil.
I just wanted to point out that several times during the community task force series of meetings that we had, we did not reach a what I call a supermajority. We just couldn't. Not enough people would agree to do it this way rather than that way, and no fistfights broke out. There was not a brawl, no big arguments. We just stepped back for a couple of minutes, rethought our vote, and eventually we did come to a majority. So it's an interesting process when that does happen.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear Neil, sometimes it's hard to agree, and especially when we feel passionate about something. And so, yeah, taking a minute to step aside, think it through. If we ever need to do that, yes. Sometimes just a little extra time. Not all of us are actors. I'm looking at you, Ian. So, I think sometimes not all of us are great spur of the moment and just reacting to things. And so we do need a little more time to think things through or a time to pause. So it's really important, if you are that kind of person, let me know and I can try to help build some time in for that so that we can have a minute or at least like have a little break where you can get up, get your blood flowing again and refocus. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. We're done okay. All right.
I'm going to apologize because I love the sound of his voice anyway.
Okay.
So Patty came in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Patty, will you just give us a quick introduction of who you are and why you're so excited to be part of the team?
Certainly. I came to work in Portland on the first light rail line in 1982, and I've been working here ever since. Most of my work is in urban design rather than designing buildings. In 1986, I was involved with the county in founding the Willamette Light Brigade, which is now continuing on its merry way. We haven't lit many bridges yet, but we're going to light another one. 8 years ago, we began the Light Festival with Chris and with Bob Hastings, who's away today. So we have an enduring interest in bridges. I was part of the design group on the redesign of the Selwood Bridge, so have that useful experience under my belt. So yes, I'm very passionate about this. This bridge is absolutely central to our community. I'm very concerned about issues of scale. One can get those so wrong, and that can be so bad. So those are really the primary things I'm interested in. But thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself.
Great. Thank you so much, Patty. And yes, there are a few people who weren't able to make it today and pre-arranged it and told me. So they will be here hopefully next time and will be able to introduce themselves as well. Okay, I think we're still officially oh, yeah, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you have not been on a bridge tour, highly recommend. It's pretty spectacular. And just going on the Burnside one, you'll just really get a sense of what we're talking about. So,
Yeah, awesome. Good plug. Okay, 8:01 still. Okay. Good job, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see you hopefully tomorrow or Thursday. Okay, thank you.
How are you?